Next we have John Mount.
John whom?
Mount,
Mount.
M-O-U-N-T.
The way to crush the bourgeois is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation. This statement was given by Fabian socialist John Maynard Keynes after a personal consultation with Lenin. The measure in question is not about taxation, regulation. It's about taxation, regulation, and eventual control at the individual micromanagement level with carbon credits. 1970s global cooling failed due to scientific evidence. It was changed to global warming in 1990s, which that died in 2000. When that proved to be a lie, it was then changed to climate change. Since then, we've been geoengineered. It's been used over time. This fear has been used over time as a hammer to increase both regulation and taxes. Clean the Darn Air is a movement in Utah sponsored and funded from out of state by ICLEI. You can look this up. ICLEI bills itself, as local governments for sustainability. It has installed its agents at the local level, and especially in the universities of the state, to push the green agenda and ESG. That's its purpose. Folks, the initiative is the first step in energy rationing. We neither want it nor need it here. I've seen the first stages put in place over the objections of the people in Utah County. It regulated the use of wood and coal-burning appliances.
10 seconds, please.
He can have my
Keep
two.
going.
Get my time too.
CO2%.
Hold on a second. Whose time is he having?
Ty Northrop.
Take my time.
Right at the bottom, Ty Northrop. You can have
CO2%
Barry Gardner. You can have mine too.
according to Wikipedia is 0.0407% of the atmosphere. Even at 100 times that, it's not possible for it to act as a greenhouse gas. This whole thing is a fraud. Thank you.
Art? What? No, excuse me.
Linda Mount?
Linda Mouse.
Okay, well, I just don't think I need to make the point that if this is premised on global warming, it's a fraud, because that point's already been made. But I think we're looking at the possibility of these taxes that are starting to sound, that they are starting out being sounding somewhat benign and small. There's no limitation on them. They can go anywhere, and they're currently going to be placed on basically every essential activity that we have, including cooking, transportation, agriculture, heating, and you can go on from there. I think the concept that it would be offset by reducing the tax, reducing or eliminating the tax on food is nonsense, because by creating more expensive transportation and limiting agriculture, you're going to be cutting back the supply of food, which is going to make food more expensive, and is also going to make transportation more expensive and heating more expensive, regardless of what income bracket you're in. So the blandishment that we're being given about taxes being cut in one place is a big fraud.
1 minute, please.
Secondly, this is a horrendous impact on us, not only economically but surveillance-wise. They track everything, every bit of energy that you use. There is no freedom. Just a note, if you're concerned about your red days in Salt Lake County, you might want to consider cutting back some of your industrial production up there, or regulating that rather than regulating. Yes, yes. And on this, I'm concerned that this is going to just be a camel's nose under the tent. It starts out a small amount, and it will just keep going from there. It's an insult to our it's a total assault on our freedom and an insult to our system. And it's particularly true given this history of voter fraud we have in this country.
Art Woodbury.
When you have a meeting like this in China or India and impose a tax on them, we can maybe talk about that. We know you're not local because you didn't pronounce Jewab very well. The coal burned in Utah for electricity for California, but we get taxed for it. That's one of the comments you made. And what does carbon tax have to do with earned income credit? There's no connection. Like was already made, it's just another control issue. It's not good.
Jacob Seibach?
Seabach.
Seibach?
Before I say my prepared remarks, I want to say to Mr. Baumann that I apologize for many of our good people in this state. We should follow Christ and make sure that we are civil in our comments and be peaceful. And then while I disagree with what you say, I agree with your right to say them. So, I live in Sanpete County. My name is Jacob Seabach. I'm a software engineer, citizen, actively engaged. My favorite title is Dad. That's what I would go by. I live in unincorporated territory near Indianola. It took me over an hour to get here, and it will take me over an hour to get home. I'm blessed with a beautiful, brilliant wife with 5 amazing children, and it costs us about $100 a week for grocery bills. It will cost me significantly more in the fuel taxes that I will end up paying than what I will save from the 1.75% reduction in the food taxes. My children, it takes them 20 minutes to get to school. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to get to the closest gas station to where I live. If I go to work, when I go into the office, it takes me over an hour to get there. And so this tax actually hurts rural Utah. And it affects those that are in your rural Utah more than what it says it will give back to us. Mr. Baumann, I actually lived up in Washington State, in eastern Washington, in 2016. I was up there for a couple of years, and I voted against it there. And I will continue to vote against it here. And I invite all of you to join with me in opposing this initiative.
Mike, U?
Is that Snow or?
It's just the letter U after his name. Or...
Let me just mention a couple of things. So first of all, since there were some comments about who's funding our campaign, you can look at the state public disclosure website to look at the funding for the campaign. Never heard of ICLEI, but if we're secretly getting money from them, then you should report us to the lieutenant governor so that they can charge us with a crime. The other thing I'll mention is if you, sir, and thank you so much for your comments about disagreeing without being disagreeable. If you or anybody else wants to do like a case study of your household, then let's send me an email and let's work the numbers. We tried hard with our policy. You may not believe me, and you may not think we succeeded, but we tried hard with our policy to have it pencil out for average families around the state. So you can email us at info@darnair.org, and we're happy to talk about it and work through the numbers. And if the numbers don't turn out right, then you got a good point. Then you got a good point. All right, sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Cool. My name is Mike Utley. I actually live pretty close to Jacob.
Mike, repeat your last name.
Utley, U-T-L-E-Y. Yeah, basically all the same things that Jacob said as far as it took me an hour to get here. Every month or every week we spend significantly more in fuel than the average aforementioned beehive family. Back when all the COVID shutdowns originally happened, I lived in the heart of Salt Lake County, and I moved out of there to escape pollution, and to live in rural Utah. I noticed an interesting thing during the COVID shutdown was that I believe it was about 75% of the automobile traffic in Salt Lake County immediately stopped, and the air pollution got significantly better. And so I think if we were to propose a solution, it would be, I think it should be directed more at the population centers and not at rural Utah. Like I said, we'll be taxed exponentially more than those where the problem actually exists. And I think if there's going to be an issue if there's going to be a discrepancy in who gets taxed more, it should be those that are actually benefiting from the taxation. That's all I have.
Thomas Furman?
Furman. Citizen. So first of all, I agree with everything that's been said. I'd just like to add that Salt Lake City has the pollution because they have the prosperity from all the companies they brought in with the tax breaks that they gave them, of the population, the jobs. We moved out here and took the sacrifice of not having those jobs. So to now turn around and you get the prosperity, but we solve the problem is just wrong. Salt Lake can raise their taxes, they can quit giving the tax breaks to the industries that are causing the pollution. There's any number of solutions. If they can solve it, it's their problem, they get all the money from it, then they can use that money to solve the problem. It's really, to me, very, very straightforward. I also think to trade a very simple tax like food tax for an incredibly complicated tax with zero ability to predict what it's going to do, what it's really going to cost in the future is ridiculous. I also disagree with this whole thing of including basically what amounts to 3 or 4 different bills all in the same one. If you want to get rid of food tax, then get a bill to get rid of food tax. If you want to increase money to the economic development, then do that. Don't throw all this in one thing. If I want to vote against the food tax, I'll vote against the food tax, but don't put it in with all this other stuff that has absolutely no relation, has nothing to do with any of it. Separate it so we can vote for what we want to vote and vote against for what we disagree with.
Amen.
1 minute, please.
I also, just the last thing is, I'm like everybody here, I'm against the whole philosophy of giving the government even more control. They already have way beyond what the Constitution allows. All of these agencies, this is a little bit off, but not really, all these agencies create the laws, they create the rules, they decide what the penalties are, and then decide who's broken the law and who hasn't. They have zero constitutional right to do that. And what you're proposing is now invading hugely into our lives in a way that we will have zero control over. I actually think there is zero chance this is going to pass. Washington already voted down. Hopefully the citizens, I'm sure they'll get a nice group in Salt Lake because, yeah, they say, hey, we'll have the whole state pay for our problem.
10 seconds, please.
But I don't think this will pass, but I just hope everybody will talk to your friends, make sure people are aware of this. If they get enough signatures, then we've just simply got to make sure this does not pass, please.
Michael Snow?
My name's Mike Snow. I'm a citizen of Sevier County. I've got them beat. It's an hour and a half to get here. First of all, I'd like to ask you a question. Can you look around this room real quick? Is this room big enough for everybody?
I think I see some empty seats.
There's people in the hall.
Well, come on in from the hall. Have some seats.
What would happen if you held this meeting at a time when most people who aren't at work could be there like 7 o'clock at night?
There's a reason.
There's a reason.
Some of us have had to take time off
We're
of work.
required to hold this hearing, so.
Why not at night? Why not in a bigger location?
So the reason is that we have to hold 7 of these hearings before we can start gathering signatures, and the legislature, as you know, does not make ballot measures very easy, and so we had to pack all the hearings together. So we have 5 hearings today.
All at the same time. You're doing all the hearings in one day.
5 out of 7.
5 out of 7 in
Yeah.
one day. Is that going to get a accurate representation of?
No.
I would say
Not-
no.
not an
Well,
accurate-
anyways,
not an
I'm
accurate.
I would
using up my
suggest
2 minutes.
recommending to your state legislature that they change the law.
Our commissioner didn't even know about the meeting.
Your commissioner got an email 2 weeks ago.
In case you're wondering about the actual costs of what the taxes will be, and this is just before the 3.5% mandatory increase plus inflation the following year.
1 minute, please.
Keep going.
9.72 cents on every gallon of gas, going up 3.5% plus inflation the next year, then inflation every year after that. Diesel, 12.23 cents per gallon. That's going to increase your food costs on top of anything else that you're paying.
Much for the tax decrease.
Natural gas, 65.84 per 1,000 cubic feet, 1 decatherm. In September, when my heater's not running, I use 1.4 decatherm. I know it's gonna be a lot more than that come January, February. And that increases my bill, if I was just using the 1.4 year-round, $12 a year. So that $12 is gonna be way up. And in case you're wondering about the extra power that we'll need when you get rid of all your carbon stuff, have you driven down and seen Sigurd Solar in Sevier County? 200 acres of solar power, 80 megawatts.
Yep.
Hunter is 1,000 megawatts. So if you take what you would need to replace that 1,000 megawatts, you're going to need 7,500 acres of solar power. And you know what they do when they put that solar power in? They bring in blades and they take out everything down to bare ground. Is that good for the wildlife?
No.
I'm asking him, is that good for the wildlife?
Probably not in that area. You got 15 seconds, sir.
Okay, and then you've got the Milford wind power, 200 megawatts, 97 towers, 16,000 acres. To get your 1,000 watts in the wind farm, you're going to need 80,000 acres. And the numbers I'm using, the 280, that's under ideal conditions, which is if the wind is blowing perfect and if the sun is shining just right.
Seth Morrison.
My name is Seth Morrison. I'm from Manti. I'm just a citizen. Actually, I would rather just face this way because I want to talk to you, not the crowd. And I'm extremely nervous because I'm pretty emotional, and I wanted you to understand that. I feel like we are so far outside the proper role of government that it would be impossible for me to cover why in this meeting. So I would plead with you to please read the Constitution, read the Founding Fathers, understand freedom, understand liberty at its core. And even if well-intentioned, right, like I know that the air is dirty, and even if well-intentioned, the way that you're going about it, I believe, is extremely wrong. You're creating your own shackles that will take and strip your freedom from you, and you don't realize it. We're upset because we see that. I spent my entire life, my childhood, growing up reading the Founding Fathers, reading the Constitution, and I see it plainly, and I apologize. I don't mean that as an insult or anything. I just plead with you to please read those things. If you would like clean air, find another way. It's not right to pass it. Even if legislation passes through, it's incorrect, it's unconstitutional, and even if you don't want to use those fun words, it truly will take your freedom away from you, whether today, tomorrow, or a year, or 5 years from now. It will be gone. And so I would just plead with you to please read those things with the intent to understand and learn and find another way. Because if your cause is good, you will find another way. And I believe in the ingenuity and intuitiveness and just the power of the human spirit to find good solutions. And that's why our system works so well. Because if you find something and there's a necessity, you will come up with a really good solution without having to go through the government, do a taxation, and force people to comply.